An animal in a tree reaches for a piece of fruit, not fresh fruit. This one has fallen, split open, gone soft and sweet and just beginning to rot. It smells different, warmer. It eats it anyway. And something happens inside its body that will still be happening inside yours millions of years later. A faint warmth, a loosening. The very first, faintest taste of being drunk in a creature that isn't human yet, sitting in a tree at the dawn of our family line. That animal is your ancestor. And that piece of rotting fruit is where one of the deepest, strangest, most dangerous relationships in all of human history begins. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you're going to understand something hiding in your own body right now, a change written into you before your species even existed that explains the entire story of humans and alcohol. Let's start by throwing out the thing everyone assumes. When you ask when humans first drank alcohol, you picture a beginning, a first person, a first cup. Someone in a village, thousands of years ago, who figured out a clever trick and invented a drink. That picture is completely wrong, and the truth is far stranger, because nobody invented alcohol. No human ever sat down and discovered how to make it. Alcohol was already here, waiting in the world, made by nature, millions of years before the first human ever drew breath. Here is the thing almost no one understands about alcohol. It makes asterisk itself. Asterisk, it is one of the few intoxicants on Earth that doesn't need a chemist, a lab, or even a human being. All it needs is sugar and time. When fruit ripens and falls and begins to rot, tiny organisms called yeast, invisible everywhere, drifting in the air and coating the skin of the fruit, begging to feed on the sugar inside it. And as they eat that sugar, they produce a waste product. That waste product is alcohol. This process is called fermentation, and it has been happening on this planet for a mind-bending stretch of time, longer than there have been humans, longer than there have been apes, longer than there have been fruit, bearing trees as we'd recognize them. Rotting fruit has been quietly turning into alcohol for a very, very long time. So the real question was never how did humans make alcohol? The question is, when did a creature first come along that was willing and able to drink it? And that word *able* is doing a lot of work, because this is where most animals hit a wall. Alcohol is not a gentle thing to put in a body. So your cells, it is a toxin, a substance that has to be actively broken down and cleared before it does damage, and that in enough quantity shuts the body down and kills. This is not a moral judgment about drinking. It is simple chemistry. The thing that makes you feel warm and loose is your body working hard to neutralize a poison, and mostly succeeding. An animal that eats fermenting fruit without the biological tools to handle it doesn't get a pleasant buzz. It gets sick. It gets clumsy and vulnerable in a world full of predators at exactly the wrong moment. For most creatures, that risk isn't worth it, and evolution keeps them away from the smell entirely. So for millions of years, all that free food lying on the forest floor, all those calories, went mostly uneaten, guarded not by any animal, but by the poison inside it, until something came along that could get past the guard. And the answer takes us out of human history entirely, back into the trees. Because here is the problem with rotting fruit, and it is a deadly one. To almost every animal on Earth, fruit that has begun to ferment is a warning. It is going bad. It can carry sickness. And the alcohol inside it is, in the plainest terms, a poison, a substance the body has to fight to break down, that in enough quantity will kill. Most animals avoid it. Their instincts pull them away. But somewhere in the deep past, in the branch of the family tree that would eventually lead to us, something different happened. An ancestor of ours, long before it was human, and ape moving through the forest, started doing the opposite. It started seeking that fruit out. Why would it do something so dangerous? Think about the pressure it was under. In the forest, food was competition, and ripe fruit high in the trees was fought over by everything. But the fruit that had fallen to the ground, the overripe fruit, the split and softening fruit that everyone else turned their nose up at, that was food nobody was fighting for. It was lying there, free, packed with calories, for any creature bold enough or desperate enough to eat it. The catch was the alcohol, to live off that fallen fruit. Your body had to be able to handle the poison inside it. And this is where one of the most important changes in your entire ancestry may have taken place. Scientists have found it, written in the genes. There is an enzyme in your body, a tiny biological tool whose job is to break alcohol down, to detoxify it, to let your body process it instead of being poisoned by it. And when researchers traced the history of that enzyme back through our family tree, they found something astonishing. At a certain point, millions of years ago, in a distant ape ancestor of ours, that enzyme suddenly got dramatically better at its job. A single change made our ancestors many times more capable of breaking down alcohol than the relatives who didn't have it. Which means that long before anyone was human, Orline was already adapting, not to make alcohol, but to survive it, to eat the fermenting fruit that would have sickened almost anything else, and turn it into fuel. Evolution had, in effect, handed our ancestors a key to a locked pantry that nothing else could open. Sit with what that means. Your ability to drink at all. The reason a glass of wine warms you instead of simply poisoning you may be a survival adaptation millions of years old, from a time before we walked upright, before we spoke, before we were us. Some scientists call it the drunken monkey hypothesis, the idea that our deep attraction to alcohol isn't a modern weakness at all, but an ancient instinct inherited from tree-dwelling ancestors for whom the smell of fermentation meant one thing, food, over here, and no one else can eat it. The pull you might feel toward a drink may be, in part, the faint echo of an ape following its nose toward fallen fruit. Picture that ape for a moment, because everything downstream flows from it. It is on the forest floor, where its cousins rarely bother to go, because the good fruit is up in the branches. But the branches are picked over and fought over, and this one is hungry. Down here is the fruit that fell days ago, bruised, split past its prime, giving off that warm, sharp, sweetish smell of rot that turns most animals away. To this ape, that smell doesn't say danger. Its body has been quietly rebuilt over countless generations so that the smell says dinner. It eats. It feels the faint warmth spread through it. And crucially, it doesn't get sick, doesn't get poisoned, doesn't die, because the tool inside it, that upgraded enzyme, is breaking the alcohol down as fast as it comes in, while other animals starve or stick to the contested branches. This one has an entire food source almost to itself, lying free on the ground. That is a staggering survival advantage. And the apes that had it lived a little better and had a few more offspring and passed the gift down, while the smell of fermentation slowly became, for our whole line, not a warning but an invitation. And if this is already rearranging how you think about that glass in someone's hand, if you're realizing this isn't a modern story at all, but one that reaches back before humanity itself, then do me one favor. Tap that subscribe button right now. This channel is for people who want the real story of where we came from, not the cartoon version. The people who want the truth buried underneath the things everyone assumes they understand. You belong here. Now stay with me, because so far our ancestors were only finding alcohol, stumbling on it by luck in the fruit nature had already fermented. The real turning point, the moment that changes everything, is when a human stopped waiting for nature to do it and did it themselves. But before that leap, there was a bridge, and that bridge was almost certainly sweetness, the sweetest thing in the ancient world, honey. Long before farming, humans risked everything for honey, climbing cliffs and braving swarms of stinging bees for that concentrated burst of sugar. And here is the thing about honey. Leave it mixed with a little water, let it sit, and the yeast in the air will find it. It ferments. It becomes one of the oldest alcoholic drinks there is. It is entirely possible that the first deliberate drink humans ever made wasn't planned at all, that someone left honey and rainwater in a hollow log or a gourd, came back days later, drank it, and felt something, and remembered, and did it again on purpose. That moment, whenever and wherever it happened, is the hinge the whole story turns on. Because it is the moment alcohol stopped being something humans found and became something humans made. Imagine it the way it might really have gone. There is no grand experiment, no flash of genius. Just a person who gathered honey, mixed some with water to stretch it, and stored it in a gourd, and then got pulled away. A hunt, a move, a few days of rain. When they come back, the mixture has changed. It smells sharper, it fizzes faintly. By every ordinary instinct, this is spoiled, ruined, throw it out. But something, thirst, hunger, curiosity, the boldness that runs in our line all the way back to that ape, makes them drink it anyway. And instead of sickness, they feel warmth, lightness, a pleasant loosening of the hard edges of the day. Now the mind does the thing our minds do best. It connects cause to effect. The honey, the water, the waiting. Next time. They leave a gourd out on purpose. They watch it. They learn the timing. And a discovery that happened entirely by accident becomes a thing done deliberately, taught to others, repeated for generations. That is the quiet birth of brewing, not in a laboratory, but in a curious person's memory of a spoiled drink they were brave enough to swallow. And once that idea was loose in the human mind, it spread and deepened into something no other animal has ever done. Deliberate brewing, the intentional creation of alcohol over and over, on purpose. But this raises the same question the smoke did, the same question everything in prehistory does. How could we possibly no asterisk? These people left no recipes. Liquid dries up and vanishes. A drink poured out thousands of years ago leaves nothing behind, or so you'd think. The answer, again, is one of the quiet miracles of archaeology. Because when people made and stored these drinks, they made them in containers jars, jugs, pots of clay. And when a liquid sits in unglazed clay, it soaks in. It leaves behind an invisible chemical residue, locked into the porous material that can survive for thousands upon thousands of years. And scientists have learned to extract that residue and read it, to take a shard of ancient pottery and ask it what it once held. And when they do, certain jars give up their secret, the unmistakable chemical signatures of fermentation, of deliberate made alcohol. The residues in some of these vessels are staggeringly old, reaching back thousands of years before much of what we think of as recorded history. Humans were brewing on purpose and caring enough about it to craft special vessels to hold it, long before they were writing anything down. Think about what that shard actually is. Simone shaped that clay with their hands. They fired it and filled it, and it mattered to them enough that they made a vessel for this drink specifically. Not just any pot, but a thing built to hold something they valued. Then the person died, and their whole world dissolved. The language they spoke, the songs they sang around that jar, the name of whatever they were celebrating, all gone beyond any recovery. And yet the drink itself left a trace, a few molecules soaked into the clay, waiting in the dark for thousands of years, until someone in a lab coaxes them back out and reads them like a message. And the message says, we were here, and we made this, and it mattered to us. It is one of the most intimate things archaeology can recover. Not a weapon or a wall, but a taste of pleasure, a small human joy, reaching across an almost unthinkable gulf of time to tell us that these people, so far back, we can barely imagine them, sat together and drank, just as we do. Which brings us to the most explosive idea in this entire story, a theory. So strange it turns the standard story of civilization on its head. We all learned the same basic story of how civilization began. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans wandered, following food, hunting, gathering, never staying anywhere long. Then, at some point, they stopped. They settled down. They planted seeds in the dirt, invented farming, and everything we call civilization, villages, cities, writing, kings, grew out of that one shift. And we've always assumed the reason they did. It was obvious. Food. They farmed grain to make bread. They settled down to eat. But some researchers look at the evidence and ask a heretical question. What if it wasn't bread? What if it was beer? Here's the reasoning, and it is more unsettling than it first sounds. Farming, in the beginning, was brutal, backbreaking, uncertain work, and the early diet it produced may actually have been worse than what hunter-gatherers ate. So why would anyone give up a freer, healthier, wandering life to break their back in a field for a worse meal? Bread alone is a strange thing to make that trade for. But alcohol is different. Alcohol brought something no other food could. It brought a warm, loosening, joyful feeling. It brought people together, made feasts and celebrations and rituals possible, greased the gears of a group learning to live crowded together in one place. In a world with no comfort and endless hardship, a drink that could lift you out of it, even for an evening, was worth extraordinary effort. So the theory goes, maybe humans didn't first tame grain to fill their stomachs. Maybe they tamed it to fill their cups. Maybe the desire to reliably make alcohol was one of the forces that pulled us out of the wandering life and planted us in one place. And everything else, all of civilization, followed. We may have settled down to drink and only later learned to call it bread. And there is a piece of this that makes it even more believable. Once you think about why people gather. Some of the oldest large structures humans ever built weren't homes or farms. They were gathering places, sites where people came together in numbers from far around, probably for feasts and ceremonies. And a feast needs something at its center, something that turns a crowd of wary strangers into a single celebrating group. Alcohol does exactly that, better than almost anything. Picture the scene, people who normally live scattered and apart, coming together in one place, nervous, guarded, and then the drink is shared, and the walls come down, and for one night they laugh and bond and become something larger than their separate selves. To hold a gathering like that, again and again, you'd need a lot of drink. And to reliably make a lot of drink, you'd need a steady, controlled source of the grain or fruit to make it from, which means you'd need to stop wandering and stay and tend that source. You can feel how the logic pulls towards settling down, not out of hunger, but out of the deep human hunger to come together. The feast may have built the farm, and the drink may have built the feast. Now, is this proven? It is a debate and a fierce one, and the truth is probably tangled up with food and drink both. But the very fact that serious people argue it, that beer might sit near the root of civilization itself, tells you how deep this goes. Alcohol isn't a footnote to the human story. It may be woven into its foundations, and you can see why once you understand what alcohol actually asterisks for these early people. Because it wasn't only about feeling good. In a crowded settlement, water was dangerous, standing water bred sickness, and dirty water killed. But the process of making alcohol often made a liquid safer to drink than the water around it. A weak fermented drink could be, strangely, one of the safest things to put in your body. Alcohol was calories to pure, easy energy in a hungry world. And above all, it was social glue. It lowered the walls between people, turned strangers into a group, made the shared feast and the sealed bargain and the sacred ritual possible. For a species whose entire survival strategy was cooperation, banding together, trusting each other, a drink that made trust and celebration flow more easily was not a small thing. It may have helped hold the first crowded human communities together. But I'd be lying to you, and this channel doesn't lie to you, if I made it sound like a gift with no cost, because the same substance that warmed the feast and sealed the friendship carried a shadow from the very beginning. Alcohol is still, chemically, a poison. The thing our enzyme evolved to defend against. In excess it sickens, it harms, it destroys judgment, it can capture a person and not let go. Every good thing it gave our ancestors came bundled with that danger, and they knew it. The very cultures that treasured drink also feared it, hedged it with rules, warned about its power to unmake a person. Nearly every ancient society that we know brewed alcohol also built limits around it, rules for who could drink, and when, and how much, and stories warning of the person destroyed by it. That is not a coincidence. It is the sign of a people who understood, from hard experience, that this gift had teeth. This is the double edge that has run through the entire human relationship with alcohol, from that first piece of rotting fruit all the way to today. It gives and it takes. It has always done both. That tension between the comfort and the cost is not new, and it is not modern. It is as old as the drink itself. So let's answer the question we started with. Honestly, when did ancient humans first drink alcohol? The truth is, there was never a first sip. No single inventor. No one moment. The story begins millions of years before humans existed at all, with an ape in a tree that ate fermenting fruit and survived it, and passed down, in its genes, a body prepared for alcohol. It runs through early humans chasing honey and stumbling on the drinks nature made for them. It turns, at some unknown fireside, into the first drink, a human made on purpose. And it may run right through the birth of farming and the foundations of civilization itself. Humans didn't invent alcohol. We inherited it, and then we built a huge part of our world around it. And now, let's kill the last myth, the one you probably started this video believing. That drinking is a modern habit, a civilized indulgence, something that came after we became who we are. It isn't. The pull toward it is older than our species. It is written into your body, in an enzyme forged millions of years ago, from a time before we were human. Drinking didn't come after us. In a very real sense, it came before us, and helped shape what we became. So here is what I want you to sit with. That ancient ape, reaching for the fallen fruit at the dawn of our family line, was reaching for the same thing a person reaches for today when they pour a drink at the end of a hard day. That warmth, that loosening, that brief lifting, away from the weight of being alive. Across millions of years, across an unimaginable gulf of time, it is, astonishingly, the same reach, the same ancient instinct, following the same ancient scent. The creature has changed almost beyond recognition. The pull has not. And a whisper of that ape in the tree, its hunger, its boldness, its strange gift for surviving a poison that felled everything else, is still in you, in your very cells, every single day. But alcohol and smoke were only two of the powers our ancestors pulled out of the living world around them. Because the same relentless curiosity that made them drink the fermenting fruit and breathe the burning leaf also drove them to a far more dangerous game, swallowing the plants themselves, one by one, to find out which ones healed and which ones killed. So how did ancient humans, with no science at all, map the difference between medicine and poison? That is the story we open next.